Welcome to session 12, which is our fireside chat with Lisa Jorgenson, who's WIPO-U.S. Deputy Director General for Patents and Technology. I'm going to be going through a series of questions with Director Jorgenson, and we're also going to open it up to you for questions. You can start asking questions in the chat when you're ready. We're probably going to go through a bunch of our questions first, and then we'll turn it to the chat as time permits. So with that, this year's World Intellectual Property Day theme was Women in IP Accelerating Innovation and Creativity. How does WIPO pick a theme?
So the theme obviously is different every year. And in this past year, or this past couple of months, when we finished it up a couple of months ago, the theme was originally picked by evaluating the trends in the IP areas. And we felt that women or IP and gender issues, women in IP was one of those global issues that really needed and still continues to need to be addressed. We chose the theme, Women in IP, Accelerating Innovation and Creativity. It's I think a theme that goes across everywhere in the world. There aren't too many people that would say it's not something that needs to be addressed. And we felt that it was a good worldwide issue that we all wanted to talk about. And we don't want it to just be a single World IP Day that we address the issues. We want it to be a theme that we continue to work on day in and day out as we progress in all of our own impact-driven projects and everything else that we can, as WIPO, can influence. It is a theme that was done in collaboration with member states and a lot of our partners around the world. Just as an example of why one of the things that helped us decide to pick this theme was that there's only about 16% of international patent applications that have a woman inventor listed. And that's just not acceptable to so many of us. And my Director General here at WIPO, Darren Tang, asked me probably about a year and a half ago to become the WIPO IP and Gender Champion. And it helped me then to bring in a very small team of 2 more people, one a senior advisor for IP and gender and a fellow. And they worked with me for months on end to come up with a first strategic plan for IP and gender. But going back to the World IP Day, there were 400 World IP Day events around the world. In I think it was around 131 different countries. We had 209 countries people from 209 different countries and territories that visited the World IP Day web pages. So we feel that the combination of those really did support our choice of theme for this year. We did a video competition for it, where the theme was When Women Enter the IP Universe, we accelerate innovation and creativity, and everyone's a winner. And we had over 23,000 votes cast for the award winners. We also had a World IP Day gallery where we were able to feature women from around the world, where they are showing us their groundbreaking ideas and inventions and creations. So that's really where we're at. We've actually picked now a theme for next year, which will probably encase at least a portion of it again on women's issues, but it will be, I don't know what the exact title is going to be, but it will be IP and the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs at the UN. And it will probably ultimately have a women's component in that as well.
Great. So you mentioned this WIPO strategic plan. Can you talk a little bit about what you have in the plan and what's coming up in the next, year or two?
Sure. So the IP and Gender Action Plan is what we're calling it, or we're calling it actually the IP Gap. We hope that's an acronym that people will pick up on. The IP Gap, well, first of all, IP and gender gap in and of itself is not really a new issue. The IP gap has really 3 pillars to it that will flow from WIPO-U's medium-term strategic plan. So Pillar 1 is to support governments and legislatures and policymakers. We want them to find it. We want to help them and support them in finding a way to include programs and into their legislation, or text even into their legislation, and programs into their policies that will support women being able to then get engaged in the IP ecosystem, and ultimately even girls getting engaged in STEM programs that can then bring them into IP through their own efforts later on. The pillar number 2 will be conducting research. If we can't understand what the problem is, we can't fix it. So conducting research is really the collection of data and then the analysis of the data, but the data has to be complete data and it has to be good data. So we've been working on at WIPO in a number of ways where we can collect data and analyze it so that we can understand this gap for women in IP. And then the third pillar is going to be building repeatable and sustainable programs that will have a true impact on the ground. So the overall goal there with those 3 pillars is to find ways to help women get engaged in the IP ecosystem. But there's 2 sort of enabling means that will go across all 3 of those pillars. The first one is collaboration. We can't do this by ourselves. So we need to collaborate outside of WIPO with other governmental agencies, UN agencies, for example, NGOs, stakeholders, universities, etc. But our collaboration also has to be in ways that so the second enabling means is a new and extensive external communication plan where we can reach more and more people with our goals and ways that we can work with them. Our collaboration is also internal at WIPO. We have what we call 8 sectors, or sectors being business units, so 8 business units. Every one of our sectors is putting on IP and gender programs, not projects, but programs that will have really high impact on the ground, wherever it is that we are putting on these programs, developing countries, least developed countries, countries in transition, as well as developed countries.
Thank you. So this is a large long-term project. If we were to have this conversation in 2 years, what progress would you like to be able to talk about?
Well, I hope that we will have a lot of things to talk about in a year's time. I think we'll be talking about the progress that we're making on the IP gap itself, the IP and Gender Action Plan. We'll be talking about, for example, areas where we've focused on, including the ability to expand the reach of our programs and projects. Let me give you an example of that. We've launched what we call the WEP, or WEP program. And I'm going to have to read this because I will never remember what that acronym actually completely entails. It's the WIPO Training, Mentoring, and Matchmaking Program. It's on IP, and it's for women entrepreneurs from Indigenous peoples and local communities. So the goal there is to promote the women entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity, especially with respect to traditional knowledge and cultural expressions. We had great success on this in the initial run, which was from 2019 to 2020. And then we did it again from 2021 to 2022 that also had a lot of success. Now in 2023, we're looking at, and even towards the end of 2022, introducing sort of the regional edition of the WEP program. So we've actually started or getting ready to start catering to the women entrepreneurs in areas like the Andean region, which will include Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Now, looking ahead, we're going to focus those regional programs in other areas like SEBS, which is the Central European and Baltic states. So the bottom line here is more regions, more assistance to women equals greater impact worldwide, and that is our goal and our focus. So next year, I hope that we would be able to share with you that we've, in our commitment to empower women, we've been successful, not just worldwide, but really even in specific regions. I would probably add to that that we're also really committed to empowering and inspiring young girls. We want them to enter the area of IP. We want to empower them through their inventions, innovations, creations, whatever it is that they're interested in, and help them gain a passion for doing what they're doing, but using IP to help them do that. We want to find ways to, and I can talk about this later as well, because I think it also applies to getting women engaged in the IP ecosystem. But for girls, it's going to be things like mentoring, finding role models, helping them network wherever they need to network just to learn and then get engaged in STEM for themselves.
Okay, so I think you talked a little bit about this already, but is there anything that member states, legislators, IP offices can do on top of what we've already discussed to help this plan move forward?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that the member states can do through their legislation, through their IP offices in every country, and even other government agencies. They really have to play, or they can play, a really crucial role in advancing the women's interests in the IP ecosystem. I would say first is they can help to collect gender disaggregated data, and they can help us develop the indicators. They can focus on collecting this data that will help us understand the current situation in their country, and how are women actually participating in their regional or countrywide IP ecosystem. The second thing I would say in terms of the issues that they can address would be the legislative and policy initiatives. They can introduce legislation and policy that will address the various different types of barriers that women are going to face either in their region or their country, or even on a worldwide basis. Some of the things that they can work on, I think, could include such things as free legal assistance and pro bono work, or pro bono programs for them. They can even do things like help desk services that can address the specific challenges that women entrepreneurs and inventors, creators may have. They could even potentially look at reducing fees in some cases, although that's always a harder topic to address. I would say that the third issue is probably implementing gender and inclusivity initiatives into their own legislation, and even within their own IP offices. They can create specialized programs, for example, or teams dedicated to promoting the gender equality. I would like to think that they also have the ability to provide mentoring programs to support women's careers and the advancement of those careers, using IP to help them with their own development of their economic situation. When you help a single woman, you really help their own community. If they're trying to build a product, for example, or create something, they're probably going to hire people in their own community to help them. When you help a community, you help a region. When you help a region, you help a country. I think that they can also provide capacity building programs. These programs, and this is where I said also with STEM, I think it can also apply for the women to get engaged in the IP ecosystem through training, through mentoring, through networking, and even potentially financial resources. And I guess the last issue that I would address here would be to help them build collaborative regional networks. The governments can foster this kind of collaboration between IP offices, organizations, and stakeholders. And this can help promote anything that's related to IP and gender issues. They can facilitate the creation of networks. They can share best practices and experiences. And they can actually even be the creator of joint initiatives. It's not quite as easy sometimes when one entity is trying to work with another entity, but it's also what WIPO is doing. This can strengthen the impact of any gender-focused initiatives that they're already working on.
Sounds like a lot that member states can do. I know the USPTO is working on some similar initiatives, so hopefully we'll see some nice progress over the next year here and around the world.
Well, just on that note too, Josh, WIPO works with the USPTO. We work with a lot of IP offices from around the world. That's a big part of our collaborative efforts, that we are all working together to help promote our own programs as well as to help promote all the other programs that everyone else is creating.
Absolutely. So we have a large number of practitioners, or at least some people who are hoping to become practitioners soon, join us today. And hopefully a lot more will watch over time as we stream this later. So what can they do? How can practitioners encourage women to use the IP system?
It's something that you all will want to think about, I think, as you decide on what direction you want your own careers to take. But I think there are a couple of things that in helping women get engaged in the IP ecosystem that you can do. And the two areas would be addressing the financial barriers that the women are going to be faced with. And the other one, or maybe one of another 2 or 3 others, would be to tailor any assistance that you might be able to provide to their specific challenges and needs. So in the area of addressing the financial barriers, again, I think you can offer pro bono work, or you can even volunteer if you can't be part of a pro bono program. You can volunteer with clinics that work with women creators and innovators, entrepreneurs. And I think that the thing there is to find a way to alleviate this barrier or this challenge that these women may be faced with. You can also, I think, just by offering your time there can really encourage women to get engaged in the IP ecosystem and help them find ways to look at IP as a means of supporting them economically. And when you do that, again, you help them, you help their community, you help their region. But just as importantly, you have to find a way to tailor your assistance to their specific needs. And again, I think you can do that through pro bono programs or volunteer clinics, where you can find a way to offer them a safe and inclusive space where they can address, or you can help them address whatever their barriers and their challenges are. And I think part of that too is you can also offer guidance on IP strategies. It's not just to say, I can help you file a patent application, or I can help you file a trademark application, but help address what it is that they need to understand in the IP fairly complicated and chaotic system, but help them maneuver their way through it in a way that they can then understand it and help them decide, is this what areas do they need to get into for their own support. I think you can also help them build networks and provide some mentorship opportunities. The clinics, maybe the pro bono programs, I think can help them with networking opportunities through getting them aligned with experienced practitioners, maybe some VCs for financing, other industry professionals, maybe just each other, so that they can share, oh, I had a great experience over here, but I had a terrible experience over here, and they can all learn from each other in their experiences. And I think you also really need to help raise awareness for them of what they need to be looking out for. Can they use IP in their own business plans if they are creating a business plan, and how would they go about doing that? And then I would actually lastly say, all you guys on this call and elsewhere, you're not off the hook. The men are just as important as the women in helping all of this come to fruition. We need both men and women in a very collaborative atmosphere to help drive these programs, the mentorship programs, the networking programs. Your contributions to all of this are just as important. And I guess I'll stop at that one. I'm I'm on my soapbox here, Josh. So we need everybody to participate in all of these programs.
Absolutely agree. So something about having everyone participate. What can in-house counsel maybe?
Josh, I'm sorry, but I can't hear you. You just kind of got muddled there, so I wasn't sure where you were going with your questions.
Having an issue, and we have to rejoin from another device. Can you hear me now?
It's still pretty muddled. You were really clear before.
Not yet.
I think he said he's going to try something. I'm really enjoying this so far. Just want to put that out there. Thank you, Lisa. This is great. And I'm taking some good notes about the ways that the member states can help, and I'll put them in our private LinkedIn group, guys.
I could try to, while we're waiting for Josh to get back on, maybe take a look at a couple of the questions or something, as I'm not sure if I can answer all of them, but I could take a look at some of this if you want me to.
Sure, why not? As I think Joshua is working on it. So, and I did see that some folks have put some questions in the chat. Do you want me to read some aloud, or do you have access and want to kind of pick some?
I have access to them here. I'm not sure if I'll try to read each one from first word to last word, but maybe I can summarize a little bit. The first one that I can see here is really on the new technologies, AI, ChatGPT. Where are they at? Where are we at, I guess, in working with those kinds of questions? And then the second part of it was developing and least developed countries have, over the period of the last 2 decades, rolled out TRIPS. Okay, TRIPS, I'm probably not going to talk about that right now, because TRIPS is really part of the WTO, to which we are an official observer. I will mention one thing here. You can go on our website and you will see that the WHO, the WTO, and WIPO have a trilateral cooperation in which we are working with the developing countries, least developed countries, et cetera, to understand how IP can help them economically try to recover from COVID. And I think that's probably where this question was going. And I'll leave it at there for that one. AI and ChatGPT, I'll just make another very couple of high level comments on it, which is obviously AI is still unknown in terms of how things are going to look like going forward. But we are working intensively on how AI, what role WIPO can take in AI. We also do have some work on, or some information, a lot of it on our website. You can look at that as well. ChatGPT is very unique. We know it's here to stay, but how is WIPO actually going to work with ChatGPT? And let me just give you one example. If you went out to, if one of my staff, let's say from our translation department, went out to ChatGPT and put in a translated part of a pending application, we have said no to that, because that puts it out into the world that somebody was working on a patent application surrounding this part of the technology and whatever it was that they were looking at trying to work on. So there are areas where we will say internally you cannot use ChatGPT. But if the information is not confidential, there's no reason to put that kind of a restriction on it. So I'm coming at it from WIPO's perspective of what can we do or maybe not want to do with respect to things like ChatGPT. Okay, I'm going to admit that I don't know what G0 means, so I will probably not pursue that question. All right, there's a question. Let's see. Which countries around the world? Okay, let me answer it this way. There are regions of the world where there are many more women inventors shown in their patent applications. As a perfect example, South America, we have places like Chile, Colombia. Their women inventors are shown a lot more in their patent applications versus even the United States, versus other parts of the world. Asia Pacific region have more women inventors typically, but Europe and the US again are not at the top of that game, if we can call it that. It's we're really working on trying to define where are the trends? Why are there more women involved in various regions? We also look at the women involved by technology. We look at it by region, we look at it by technology, and we do see that biopharma have that technology area has more women inventors in it than, say, computer science. And we look at everything. There are some reports out on our website that can go into some of that for you if you have an interest in gaining more information specifically on those. Okay, I think I just said, oh, when will the 2024 World IP Day theme be officially announced? I'm really not sure because we're trying to finalize the actual topic title, not the topic itself, but the title for it. And it will be IP and SDGs : and then something, just like this year was IP and gender, and then it had a title after that. There will be a title, and they're just trying to narrow it down to what they want that title to be most descriptive of what we would want to work on. But we do support all 17 of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Within those 17, however, I'm sure if you know about the SDGs, you will see that we really hone in on several of them more than others, but we do support all 17. So they're looking for that title that will support how we want this to go forward for next year's World IP Day. But stay tuned, because I don't think we're very far away from that. Okay, Josh, you're back.
Yeah, I'm back on. My iPad is working, and the laptop is not.
And just to let you know, I went through the first 2 or 3, I think, questions while we were waiting for you to get back on.
Okay, thank you for that. And sorry about the technical difficulties. So I think the question I was asking was, what can in-house counsel, particularly at large companies, do to encourage women participation in the IP system? And is it different from how they encourage other employees' participation?
So are you distinguishing between in-house versus outside counsel, or do you want me to maybe just think about
Yeah, I think
combination of the two?
You can certainly talk about both. I think we've spoken a little bit about outside already. And I think, outside, usually people come to you. In-house, sometimes you have to go to the scientists, go to the engineers, and explain to them why they should be reporting to you. So I think it's a little bit different, but feel free to talk about both.
Yeah, so let me just add a couple comments then to what I've already provided. One is, education is the key. Every in-house department needs to be able to educate not only their own staff of attorneys and agents, but they have to be able to educate their researchers and scientists. They need to find a way to educate them in the sense of how does getting involved in IP, and I came from an in-house organization. I was 25 years at a chip company. It was really difficult sometimes, especially with newer inventors, to explain to them why obtaining patents was going to be valuable, not only to the organization, but also for them. So I think education is really one of the key things. From an outside, from a law firm perspective, the ability to support SMEs, the ability to support individuals, Let me just give you an example of it. Darren Tang, our Director General, and myself and a couple other colleagues spent about a week in California a couple of weeks ago. And what we found, and I guess I probably knew this a bit from before, but what we found were more law firms that were going out to places like incubators. And the incubators, as you probably know, are areas, or it's an area where a lot of different SMEs can come together and be offered space or tools or time to be able to come in and start looking at how can they make their startup or their move towards becoming a startup, make it viable. And law firms were going in and saying, let me take you from A to Z, from soup to nuts. And we will work with you on first, how to incorporate IP into your overall business plan, then how to help you understand how you can manufacture or either a product or a process. How can you then look at commercializing it? All along the way, looking at how to protect what they're doing with IP, whether it's patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, any form of IP. And then even as much as how to help you obtain financing from VCs. And at the end, if necessary, how to enforce your own IP to protect what you have just created. But the bottom line in many ways is to say, let's get away from talking about patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, and let's start talking about innovation and creativity. How do we help you with your innovation? How do we help you with your creativity? But these firms were going in and really working with startups in incubators, but not just incubators. They could be startups all out there on their own as well, and taking them from A to Z. So it is not to say, and I think this could be important if you, especially if you choose to go in-house or not, well, if you choose to go to a law firm, stop thinking about how you're going to help your client write a patent application and start thinking from a business standpoint, how can you help your client go from the idea of being a startup all the way through to enforcing their intellectual property? And how do you help them put IP into their business plan? Really from a business standpoint versus a technical, I can help you write a patent application standpoint. And I think actually, if you can do that, you will make yourself more valuable in the law firms that you may choose to go to. And even so, coming from in-house, if you can look at the bigger picture, the business scope of what you're trying to do for your client, and in that case, you only have one client, the corporation. How can you help them from a business perspective be successful versus I'm going to help that inventor file an application on that invention? Think broader, think business.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an innovation law clinic here where we partner teams of students, usually one corporate, one tax, one IP, early stage companies, pre-revenue, often minority and women-led where we can find them, but it really depends on who's available. And while we do file patent applications and trademarks, and we'll help them with copyrights, and people do come to us from the PTO, we always, when we start, go through what their goals are, what they actually have, and then talk to them about what they can do to protect and how they get to where they want to go. And if it's filing a patent application, great. And if a patent doesn't make sense for them, that's also fine. And I think that it's a great skill set for students to learn. For any Mason students or potential Mason students who are watching, feel free to apply to the clinic or reach out if you've got questions. So a question I saw in the chat that relates to a question I was about to ask anyway was, what are some WIPO projects and plans currently in place in relation to helping SMEs? And what are some challenges SMEs face in enforcing their IP rights?
Yeah, it's a perfect segue from what we were just talking about as well. WIPO has a number of services. We have free tools that any SME or anybody can go online and look at what we offer in terms of how to support an SME or an individual inventor. Let me just give you a few of them, but you can go online at WIPO and you will see that we have the ability to help startups look at where they're currently at, how to assess where they want to go, and how can IP take them from step A to step B. The first one that I would probably mention is a tool or a product that we offer, a service called Enterprising Ideas. You can see all of these on our webpage, but this introduces startups to IP in general. How can how to teach them about IP in a way that will take their product to commercialization and hopefully beyond, whether it's commercialization in their own hometown or in their region, their country, or even on a global basis. The second one that I would mention is probably what we call navigating intellectual property for startups. It's pretty simple. But this is a program that's going to be designed to help business navigate through all of the various complexities of IP. It's going to provide information and guidance to entrepreneurs that will discuss all the various different types of IP, but how to use it to protect and promote their businesses. And the last one that I'll mention, because there's plenty of others that you can find also on the website, we call it the IP diagnostic tool. I just find this absolutely fascinating. This tool, and again, these are all free, is designed to help small and medium-sized businesses to understand the strength of their IP. And again, it's free, but it will guide users through a variety or a series of questions that will cover all the different aspects of IP. It will cover patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, but then it's going to generate a report for that SME on the situation of their business, the strength of that IP, and even offer some recommendations for a strategy for them. Anybody can see what we've got on the website, but those are some of the tools that we offer. And again, as an agency of the UN, a technical agency, specialized agency of the UN, these tools are all going to be offered for free to anybody who wants to find them on the website.
That's great. And Christina said she's going to post in our LinkedIn group so everyone here can see them. So what can we do to encourage more women and girls to join the creative and innovative industries? And how does STEM or STEAM education fit in?
So let me start by addressing, which I think you had asked from the questions that you sent me, Josh. First of all, how to get maybe students or women into the IP profession, which is different than helping SMEs and entrepreneurs. And if we start with that one first, anybody who wants to move from an engineering field, a technical field, a researcher, or in the biopharma field, I would suggest that if you have any interest in IP at all, just start to learn about it. Just engage yourself in the process of understanding what is IP, so you can learn and decide whether or not you would ever even want to be in the field of IP. But then conversely, you can also look at it from the perspective of learning enough to know the right questions to ask to figure out how IP can help you with your startup or as an SME. And in doing that, first of all, if we can increase more women in the IP ecosystem, right, that brings in diversity, that brings in women who really could benefit from this for their own economic situation. But we won't lose all that knowledge and really brain power of all these women that could come into the system and make us all better, make us more diverse and inclusive. But we also have a WIPO Academy. And again, we offer free online courses. If you actually have an interest in learning IP as an SME, you can go and find those courses that would relate to how to start up your business, how to find IP financing or financing for your startup, how to enforce your IP, how to and decide what IP you need just to protect your own product. But we also have the ones for learning how to write a patent application, how to write a trademark, how to register your trademarks, how to register your copyright. So if you want to be in the IP profession, we also have a lot of free courses in that area as well. So the bottom line is just expand your knowledge, whether you want to be in the IP profession or whether you want to use IP in your own business.
Okay, I think that certainly talked about encouraging women to join the IP profession. Do we want to talk a little bit about STEAM and STEM education and starting early on?
Sure. To get girls involved in STEM and even in the arts with STEAM, we have to find a way to inspire them and empower them to look at IP as something that they would really want to know about. We can do that in a couple of ways. We can, first of all, I think bring to their attention, foster their passion, foster their curiosity with role models. If we can find successful women and tell their stories, I think this is one of the best ways to get girls involved in STEM or STEAM. Let me give you an example. I don't know if anybody knows the name Aisha Bowe. She is truly one of the most remarkable role models. She embodies this spirit of empowerment in ways that I think will foster this passion or curiosity in IP for girls. So she defied expectations as she was growing up, and you can read about her both on the WIPO website as well as elsewhere, but she is a rocket scientist. She is also a very seasoned entrepreneur. She is making history as the 6th Black woman that will go up in space. But of that being the 6th, she will also be the first Black woman that will do it by traveling commercially with Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin. She has found a way through her one or more of her startups, which deals with education, to really ignite this spark in girls. And she's just an amazing person. She has learned through her entrepreneurship how to use IP in her business plans, how to use it to help her commercialize her products and services. She has used it to help get trademarks for her brand and content, her brand and designs, get copyright protection for her course content and the materials she uses to teach, and of course, patents for her inventions. But she has actually really done an amazing job at using IP in the development of her own products and services, using it as part of her business model. We had the opportunity to meet her during all of our lead up to World IP Day for IP and Gender. We interviewed her also for the WIPO magazine. So if you go on the WIPO website, you'll see an article on her in WIPO magazine. She's just a very inspiring woman that I think can help us learn how to better engage girls in STEM and STEAM. So mentoring and promoting role models, I think, is really one of the key ways that we can get girls involved.
That's great. And I see Mary Claire added her website in the chat. So anyone who's interested in going to find some more about her can go, and also link to an article in WIPO-U.S. magazine about her. So GLIPA, the Global IP Alliance, which I know WIPO signed an MOU, has a goal of teaching 1 million students about IP. How can that initiative be used to help here?
Yes, so WIPO did sign an MOU with GLIPA or GLIPA that we're using. I'm actually going to look for my notes on it because I think I had some statistics, but if I can't find them real quick, I won't bother. We we did an MOU with GLIPA because they want to reach out on a worldwide basis. And I think what I was looking for is they have a very strong outreach already in a number of different countries. I think don't quote me because I can't find my note on it right away, but I think it's around 131 different countries that they have been able to reach out to. They don't do policy work. Their vision and mission is almost very similar in many ways to a part of our journey at WIPO, which is education, networking, capacity building, finding ways to reach out to SMEs, to women, to youth, which is also a huge area for growth for us at WIPO, is to reach out to youth. And they want to also find ways to share the story of how people can use IP to get engaged in the IP ecosystem, but in ways that's really going to help them and their communities economically. We did this MOU because we continue to work very closely with them on ways that we can further that outreach through each of our two organizations. And I think it's really coming to fruition that they have up to now hundreds of people that are part of GLIPA that are helping disseminate all of this various information.
Yes, and I think the 131 sounds right. I'm not part of GLIPA, but I'm part of their U.S. branch, and we've done some joint meetings, and it's a group I feel pretty strongly about. So, changing gears a little and talking about impressive women in the IP space, how did you join the IP community?
That's a very long, evolved response that I could give you. If somebody had said 10, 20, 30 years ago that I'd be living in Geneva and working at WIPO, I would have told them they were crazy. My journey is going to be as different in getting into IP as every one of you on this call. So I think there are some things that you can do to also further your own careers in IP. But for me personally, I actually started out with a science degree in biology, and then immediately went into selling electrical equipment to the nuclear power industry. So there's an oxymoron right there for you. But I spent that 10 years that I was in sales for a company called Westinghouse. I did a business degree, a master's in business at night, and then I got my law degree at night. So I decided at the end of that 10 years that I didn't want to look back and wish I'd tried in practicing law, and went to a small firm where I was doing litigation. But I started doing, I came from the corporate world, and I was very comfortable in the corporate world. In the law firm area, I was always on somebody else's schedule, and that didn't really sit well with me. So I went back in-house, even though I had done some litigation in areas like trade secrets, and got a taste of IP. But with my science background and with a little bit of experience in law, I went back in-house to a company called ST Microelectronics, where I spent the next 25 years working in patents, trademarks, copyright, everything. And every day seemed like there'd be a new question that could be a great law school exam question, because you wouldn't know what the answer was. You really had to go research and figure it out. But that was part of the fun for being in-house versus having a client for, if you're outside counsel, maybe doing patent prosecution. I did patent prosecution, but I got a sense of everything else that the company was involved in. That is how I got into IP, as I went in-house in an IP department at ST. And then in the last 13 years, I had been their chief IP counsel on a worldwide basis, which also gave me the opportunity to travel and see IP ecosystems all around the world. Everything from, the developing countries to major areas where the 5 largest IP offices were located, Europe, Japan, Korea, China, and the US. And it was just a wealth of experience that I thoroughly enjoyed. But from there, I had to decide if I wanted to ultimately maybe retire from ST or go do something else. Well, obviously, I decided to go do something else. I went to AIPLA, the American Intellectual Property Law Association, which is where Josh and I met.
Yep.
And just had a really wonderful time learning a whole new area, but also bringing my skill set to bear to help run that organization. But from there, then I decided to move on to public service and came over here to Geneva, to WIPO, and I've loved every minute of it. So that's my journey, and everybody's journey will be different. So I guess one thing is to say, if you think you know where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, that's great, but don't close the door to opportunities that might just suddenly present themselves to you, that you might really just enjoy going in a completely different direction than where you thought you were going to be, 5, 10, 15 years before.
Yeah, definitely great advice. So we have just over 20 minutes left, and I think we can turn to questions in the chat. I may be missing some from when my Zoom connection crashed, but I'm going to start with the ones I can see. And then if there's any others in the chat that you can see you want to tackle, then that's great.
Let me, if it's okay, Josh, I'll answer some of these too, if I can just kind of pick out some of the ones that might be related to what we've already talked about as well.
Yeah.
There is a question in here about projects and plans in relation to SMEs. So I gave you a few areas of where you can go in and look for information on WIPO's website. If you're looking for one or two things, either to help you in a career in IP or as an SME or an entrepreneur. But we also have a lot of other programs through the WIPO Academy that are directed specifically to SMEs, and in both creating their rights, managing their rights, and enforcing their rights. And we also have a lot of information in other areas like alternative dispute resolution. So we do a lot in this area. We are growing rapidly in this area. Many more people are using ADR for trying to settle any potential issues that they have between themselves and another party. So we also offer those services as well. I hope that answers that question. And I think that may answer the next question that's below that, the robust distance learning courses available like this. Yes, specifically for small business, specifically for women entrepreneurs, specifically for youth. And I'll just put a plug in here too, that if you're looking for a career in IP, we have programs that you could think about, alternative to corporate programs, alternative to outside counsel, at least maybe in a first instance. We have fellows that we bring in. Fellows for WIPO means that you come in and learn about WIPO. You come in, but you are required to work your full 8-hour day in and day out, because we look at fellows as true staff resource to work on the programs and projects that we have. So you get a lot of great experience that way. Another one is what we call YEPS, or the Young Experts Program. Now it's only for 11 hired or brought into WIPO per year. And unfortunately, for those who want to become a YEP, it's very, very competitive. But we bring in 11 people from around the world for 2 years. And they work first in one business area or sector, and then they move to a second business area or sector for the second year. And they are people who have to have experience in some area already. They have to be 35 or under, so it's young experts, and that definition is 35 or under, which I think is pretty broad for most people. But it's an amazing amount of experience that you can get. That group is really the goal of that group is for you to go back to your home country or wherever else you want to go, having had that 2 years of experience and becoming basically a WIPO ambassador in your own country or where you end up. So that's another alternative. So WIPO also has programs for hiring people if you are interested in being in the IP field, but that doesn't mean that you can't leave and go back and become an SME or become an entrepreneur or hopefully you'll go back and be an ambassador to help SMEs, help youth, and help women who want to use IP for their own benefit. I hope that somewhat answered that question.
I think it did, and it sounds like you have some great opportunities. So we briefly mentioned ADR, and I see a question on WIPO-U's ADR program and asking about a couple of reasons why it's more beneficial to users than other existing international ADR programs.
The WIPO ADR program?
Yeah.
Okay, so sure. The ADR programs, regardless of where you're at, but specifically at WIPO, can help you hone in on the specific issues that you have between yourself or your entity and another person or another entity, in a way that hopefully will get you to a resolution substantially faster and at a lot less cost to you and to the other side for that matter. But and we also have the ability to help put ADR clauses into contracts. If you're doing a contract with another entity, we can help you decide if ADR clauses might benefit you in the future, so that if you do get into an issue with another entity, you can look to ADR to support you. But it is hopefully the goal is to find a much quicker resolution and at a much less expensive cost to you. In fact, I think that's why a lot of people are turning more and more to ADR today than ever before.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. I also heard from a few that some of it, the fact that it can be worldwide in scope and litigation tends to be local, is probably another big potential benefit. And that if you are having a large worldwide disagreement between companies, it's nice to have one and done where that's possible. So I see another question. It says, in bibliometrics research, we see citation rings of men that deliberately cite each other, which maximize their research areas, a group of men. So I think the question is, how can women also use that? And I certainly see that not just in science, but in the law profession as well, where there's certain group professors who constantly cite themselves, and it increases how many people read it. And that's a great way to get your material out there. And probably,
yeah, I don't know if I can actually make a comment on what's precisely happening, but if you step back a bit, as the fewer women that are in the field, there are going to be fewer women for anybody to cite to for their own publications, right? So if you have men who are working with each other, and almost exclusively that's the work they're going to cite, deliberately cite, because they may not have other citations that they can actually look at and use. So I guess the goal is to bring more women into the system, more researchers, more engineers, but into the system where they are, their work is going to be seen and hopefully then cited by more people. But I don't know that I've actually addressed or seen the issue of men citing only other men's issues deliberately.
Yeah, I don't think the question saying deliberately is just, and this happens with, when you're picking speakers for conferences or other things, people tend to go to, oh, I've seen so-and-so speak, or I've written with so-and-so before, so I'm gonna go back to them. And I think maybe the answer is simply to look, see who else is out there and, expand. And there's probably great people out there you're not thinking of first. And if you just go to person one every time, then you're not building the networks.
Right.
So another question, what has been the most impactful thing you're most proud of having worked at since joining WIPO? We'd love to get an idea of some of the projects you've led there.
Well, two things, I guess. One is the IP and gender gap, this brand new strategic plan that we have put together to address the gender gap in IP on a worldwide basis. That has been, I think, just a phenomenal program throughout WIPO. It has become part of our business in WIPO, that everything we do, from making sure that our staff are also gender inclusive, so that we don't have only men at certain job grades, but we have, combinations of men and women, because the diversity of thought really does strengthen a team. Everything from internal to things like asking our member states to ensure that when they send delegations to WIPO, that their delegations are also a combination of men and women and are not only men delegations. To then looking to how do we support SMEs, women inventors, creators, innovators. I think that's one of them. The other one for me that I hope in time will prove to have been a very successful program is changing the culture in the PCT. Changing that culture means, for example, creating some pilot teams that we're testing right now in our examination core, from simply doing the examinations themselves, and we aren't in a substantive examination. We only look at the logistics of the patent applications that come in, the formalities examination. But changing that from only looking at what's in front of them, a specific application that they are examining at a point in time, to moving to a customer-oriented approach where the examiners will be working directly with clients, basically, the stakeholders, the ones who are submitting their patent applications to us, and helping them to maneuver or navigate the PCT so that they can get good results from the PCT applications that they're filing and get their questions answered very timely and very thoroughly, so that we don't have to say, oh, we got to go talk to this person or we got to go talk to that person, but I'm the person for you to talk to. It's going to be a very customer-oriented approach. So that's changing the culture in that way. We're also, as PTS, the Patents and Technology Sector, we're also internally looking at finding ways to go to have our work we collaborate across all the sectors much more now under our new DG than we ever did before. And I think that this is helping really do more for our stakeholders and our member states than ever before. So you come into WIPO as a stakeholder or a member state and say, I've got a question on A. Well, if A is a trademark and you came into the patent side, we're not going to say, hang up the phone and go call the trademark department. We're going to say, great, I'm going to help you, and we're going to get the right people involved at the right time, so we can really support our stakeholders and member states just across the board with all of the traditional services like the registries, the patent registry, the trademark registry, but everything else as well, such as helping SMEs understand how to use IP for their own benefit. So I think those are a couple of things that I'm hopeful when I leave here at the end of my contract term, is to say, I had a big hand in helping WIPO evolve into more than it is today.
That's great. So I see, I think, two more questions, or maybe a couple more being added. So we have still about 10 minutes left. So one is, how do you measure outcomes in the IP gap program?
Well, that is a really great question for whoever asked that. It's not going to be easy. How to measure will determine how well we understand the data and analyze the data. And then the programs that we build from knowing that data, where are those gender gaps and who needs the support the most, will determine how successful we can be. Internally at WIPO, we have KPIs, our indicators of success. And for the IP and gender program, for the IP gap, the KPI was not just for my team. The KPI was a cross-sector KPI to say, how are we going to not just offer a program for 20 women in Africa, but how are we going to offer sustainable and repeatable programs that might have started in Africa, but we can then offer them, even if they have to be tailor-made to a different region. But how do we offer those same programs to 50 women in Colombia, or 20 women in Jordan? We have to find programs that are sustainable and repeatable and are impact driven. So everything we do in WIPO really needs to be impact driven. And that's what we will look at when we decide if programs have been successful.
Okay, and I see a good question to ask anyone. So what is the biggest challenge you think that's facing WIPO today?
Wow. WIPO works in a multicultural environment. Multilateral negotiations have become increasingly more difficult. And so for WIPO to be truly successful, we need to find the right programs that can go across all countries, all regions, that benefit basically everybody. And everybody agrees that those programs will benefit everybody. Now, that's not to say that a program in Africa needs to be repeated in the US. That's not the case. But are we developing and creating the right programs across the board for all of our stakeholders in all regions of the world? That's one aspect. Another aspect are going to be our treaties. How do we keep, if necessary, update our treaties in ways that all of the member states can agree? And that's becoming increasingly more difficult to do. So if we wanted, as an example, to update the PCT, Patent Cooperation Treaty, if we wanted to do something simple, like say, let's get rid of the fees for pages of content, because we don't work with pages anymore. We work in the digital field or the digital world. That's a really difficult task to accomplish because you have to get everybody to agree. So I think that one of the most difficult things for WIPO and other UN agencies, by the way, not just WIPO, is working within this multilateral, multicultural world, in where we really need to find areas of common for everybody.
Okay,
that's a pretty broad statement, but I think it's probably a pretty valid assessment.
Yeah, it's I think a great answer to a very difficult question. So C1 on courses. WIPO has a number of excellent master's level courses in association with various institutions. Are there any plans to tie that one up with the US institution sometime soon, or one in Germany or England?
Great question once again. I don't know if I can give you the specifics on when we started some of these programs and exactly what they are, but we do have a program with Harvard University, and we will be a master's program. And we do have programs with other universities around the world. I am not sure how that would be found on our website, but we do have programs with them. And Josh, if you want to follow up with me later, we can try to get some more information on those kinds of programs back out to you that you can share. The master's level courses, of course, are ways of trying to say we want to train the best of the best. We want to train the elite practitioners. Once you get to a master's level course, we want to take you to the next level yet again. And in doing that, we will be working through our WIPO Academy, but in some cases, we will also be working with universities.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely follow up and share information with our students. So I think a follow-on question from that one was, trade secrets as IPR have not proliferated as much as patents, trademark, copyrights, et cetera. Are there any specific plans regarding trade secrets? And also, is WIPO planning on offering courses on trade secrets?
Okay,
we'll be
great
covering
questions.
trade secrets here next week, just as a
Yeah, exactly. Trade secrets is a key area for us. We know that trade secrets can complement patents, or they could be standalone. And it really is becoming much more valuable and critical for people to understand what trade secrets can do for them in an IP world for each, for their own selves, for their SME, as an individual entrepreneur or as a major corporation. We are working on trade secrets through my patent and technology law department. It's called PTLD. We have offered a couple courses, but they've been like one-day courses on trade secrets, not a course through WIPO Academy. But we are looking at ways in which we need to strengthen our own ability to educate people on trade secrets. So it actually might be a good idea if we did a WIPO Academy course on trade secrets, and I will actually take that back to the team and see, if there's a way that we can incorporate that. But we do know that trade secrets is becoming increasingly more valuable to people, especially when around the world in different IP offices, the ability to get a patent or not get a patent can sometimes be unknown when you first file.
Okay, so I think we have one question left, and we have time for about one more question, so that works out well. So how does WIPO plan to resolve the conflict between IP protection and the growing movement of open science?
That's a great question, and I am not sure that I will have an answer to it. What I will tell you is that the open science community here in Geneva, we are a part of the discussion, and I don't think that they are actually mutually exclusive. But stay tuned, because I think there is a lot of unanswered questions here that we are working on at WIPO in this area.
Okay, and yeah, I also agree. I don't think there's necessarily a conflict between the two, but there's the potential conflicts, but you can be open for some things in protection, having certain licensing on others.
Right.
Which the open source community in the U has similar things there. Well, you might be open source, but also still file for copyright and still have a license on what people can do with it. It's not 100% open. Okay, so I guess we do have one last question. So ADR is based on agreement between two or more parties. How do parties work on that when they're from different countries? And how does WIPO help deal with that problem?
Well, another great question. Let me just, I guess, briefly answer it by saying that first of all, if you have an agreement, the two parties had to get together to decide what the language of the ADR provision would be. So presumably, if they have entered into an agreement, they have both agreed to the language. And again, actually, sometimes that could be a source of contention, is did we both have the same understanding of that language that goes into that agreement? And this is where I think up front, we might have the ability through our team that handles licensing agreements, might be able to help you understand what kind of text or what kind of provisions you might want to put into an agreement for ADR. But WIPO will work with that ADR provision if you come to our ADR services, WIPO will help with trying to understand what those provisions mean, and are the parties looking at it the same way or different.
Thank you. We're out of time, but I see a question on the Innovation Index. So I'm going to say if you want to make any quick comments on the Innovation Index and how to increase awareness about it.
Yeah, the Innovation Index has just been a phenomenal program for WIPO to work on with all of our various member states. And it is true that some of the states, member states, are not using it as much as others, but we do reach out when asked by a member state. We are a member state driven organization, so we don't go into a member state and say, hey, you got to go do this. But when asked how to look at the Innovation Index and how can, and a member state asks us, how can they potentially do better so that they can move up in that Innovation Index, we can offer support to them in first understanding the Innovation Index, what goes in it, what's behind it, and then try to help them understand areas that they might be able to work on. As far as increasing awareness, we track all of the countries that are members of WIPO, and when asked, we will support them on understanding the innovation index. It's been a very powerful tool for a lot of countries.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and thanks very much
Thanks.
for joining us today. I think everyone should give a nice round of applause.
Thank you.